Joining me now is Washington Congressman Adam Smith. He is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee and a good friend to this show. Congressman, we're glad to have you back, sir. So President Trump's plans for the next phase of the war remain unclear. On Saturday, he backtracked on a U.S.-backed Kurdish forces offensive and said he might send American ground troops to Iran at some point, adding, quote, "It would be a great thing." Is there any indication the administration has a clear plan for this war and its aftermath?
No, they don't have a clear plan. They have a somewhat vague idea of what they want, which is, frankly, what we all want. We'd love to have a government in Iran that wasn't spreading terrorism throughout the region, building ballistic missile programs, and chanting death to Israel and death to America. The question is, the gap between what they want and the path to getting there is enormous, and it's why we shouldn't have stumbled into this war in the first place. Right now, at enormous expense, we've already lost 6 American service members, and yes, Mr. President, take off your hat at a funeral. We have seen the economy devastated. We've seen, gosh, thousands of civilians killed, the entire region of the Middle East destabilized, all for the basic goal in the short term of trying to degrade Iran's capability. By how much? And to Senator Murphy's point, how long is that degrading going to last before they simply rebuild it? We spend all of this money and wind up right back where we were. Now, I think what Trump believes is that if we bomb Iran hard enough, if we hit them hard enough, that basically whoever winds up in charge of the country will become more pliant. They will be more willing to do what Trump tells them. There is zero evidence right now that that is happening, even after the killing of the Ayatollah and so many other leaders. The ones that are left seem just as dug in as the ones that we killed. So we're not making progress towards that goal. So at enormous expense, we are making a tiny little bit of progress towards temporarily degrading Iran. These are exactly the same type of mistakes that we made, thinking that we could fix Iraq, we could fix Afghanistan, we could fix Libya. It's the lessons that Donald Trump, of all people, claimed to have learned when he was campaigning for president. He very clearly has not.
So Trump also blamed Iran for the airstrike on an Iranian girls' elementary school that killed dozens of children, adding they're very inaccurate with their munitions. He did not cite any evidence for that. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the strike is being investigated, and multiple analyses suggest that the school was likely hit by an American airstrike. So how do you respond to the president's comments?
Yeah, 2 things. First of all, Donald Trump is a liar. I know people, there are people who say things that are untrue from time to time. There are people who say lies from time to time. And then there's people like Donald Trump, who the truth is completely irrelevant to anything that comes out of his mouth. There is not a single solitary moment in Donald Trump's life when he pauses and goes, well, I want to say that, gosh, is that true? No. It's not to say that he doesn't occasionally accidentally say things that are true, but it is never the focus of the words coming out of his mouth. So you can completely and totally disregard anything that he has to say. The idea that an errant Iranian missile caused this seems highly unlikely. The facility was near a naval installation in Iran that we were targeting. It seems to me at this point that CENTCOM is dragging their feet a little bit and giving us the information, because it seems likely this was a mistake by us. And then the second point is Hegseth and Trump's, whole, there are no rules of engagement are pointless. We're not going to fight a woke war. Basically, we're going to go in and try to kill as many people as we possibly can. That sort of callous disregard for protecting civilian lives in a conflict has consequences. And I am pretty sure that when the dust settles and we see what actually happened here, the death of those 150 Iranian schoolgirls will be one of those consequences of taking that cavalier an approach to protecting civilians in a war.
The president said that he should be involved in choosing Iran's next leader and has repeatedly raised the possibility of using the so-called Venezuela model of regime change in Iran. Given the history of Iraq and Afghanistan, and you've referenced that, how realistic or dangerous is Trump's assumption when you're talking about a much larger, heavily armed country?
Yeah, well, it's idiotic. I mean, Venezuela is not Iran, and that is the understatement of this interview. So there's really no comparison. And we've seen how dangerous it is. Trump blundered into this war thinking it would be easy to accomplish the goal you just set. that basically we could smack Iran around for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'd give us the leader we wanted. That's what he thought, apparently, which is monumentally stupid. There's no way that was ever going to happen. 90 million people in Iran, vastly, more entrenched regime, military capability. It was never going to happen, but I think that's a pretty good description of how we've gotten into this very, very dangerous conflict. As Trump thought, I want it, I'm snap my fingers, I'm going to drop a few bombs, use the basic bullying, coercive tactics he's always used and get what he wants. It's very clear that's not going to happen, which we all knew before this whole thing started. Now the question is, as your previous guest and you discussed, so what happens now that Trump hasn't been able to achieve his goals in the simple way that he envisioned? Is he smart enough to not throw good money after bad and find an off-ramp, or does he dig in and keep moving forward? And I'm really frightened about what the answer to that question will be.
Okay, Congressman Adam Smith, as always, thank you so much, sir. The long wait, what we know about the thousands of stranded airline passengers who just want to go home.